have you heard of a guy called Renato Canova? He's one of the best coaches in the world. He's Italian, but he's based in Kenya now. He's been based there for quite a while, I think, and he's got some brilliant like little bits that you can pick up on to try and get training ideas and stuff. But he's very elite as well. But he says, I was watching a thing of his this morning, and it was the marathon is either a really long way or it is not a long way at all. And he said it's all about whether you're trained or not. And he said, for guys that prepare properly, it's actually quite easy. And that's a real challenge for the amateur because it's all on a time scale and things like that. And for most people, you never ever really get conditioned for 26 miles. You might get to 22, 23 if you're quite advanced, and some people might get the full distance. But if you look at, I remember seeing Mo Farah's program when he first turned to the marathon between Olympics, and he was doing race distance in his long run every weekend, and probably at a very easy pace for him. But when you break it down, is if you're doing 26 miles, but you run 50-mile weeks, which is a good commitment for an amateur, that's 50% of your running load in one go. Whereas if he's doing 120 miles and he runs less than 25% of that once, it's actually a lot more manageable. And then the conditioning that you get. So I think I've not seen the whole thing yet, but Renato Canova coached Emil Carres, who's the British guy that came third at the weekend. I think one of his training sessions, from what I can gather in the blurb, was 42 times 1K at 3-minute kilometer pace.
Oh, wow. And he's having a break in between.
I would imagine they'll keep the break quite short to try and keep it relevant to like aerobic fitness.
Oh, yeah.
So it might be like 60 seconds off, or it might be like a 2-minute jog. When I do sessions, like if I do 1K sessions, or elite triathletes, like some of the top level, they'll do like 12 to 14 times 1K, but they will do it much faster than their race pace though. So they'll be really pushing. So it's a different session, but it's still huge volume of intensity.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? And it's very specific genetics. You just look at them, and they're like, you look at Emil Carres. He's very thin and light, but he's also very muscly.
Yeah,
just like Kipchoge. So he doesn't have big muscles, but it's like wiry muscle. So he's really pretty athletic and powerful for a very light guy. And it's anyway, it's fascinating stuff. But let's talk about your ultra.
It is fascinating just on that. Like, some of these guys are amazing athletes. I guess when you get to the amateur, there's no way the amateur could do that level of volume, and if really he's hard, a dad as well, if he's professional and that's what he does for his job, then do most of these guys work as well, or not? They don't.
No,
they probably got sponsors and stuff.
I think that's one of the things that's really hard is, did I ever send you the podcast of the New Zealand runner that got busted?
Busted for?
He got done for EPO.
No, I never got that one. Kiwis don't cheat, do they?
Oh, mate, it was hard listening. It was really hard because, it was 2 weeks after sentencing. There was no denial. He had to be really careful with what he said, but he was really open with talking about it and saying, yeah, I've done it. I've made the biggest mistake in my life. There was none of this, it's contaminated food, the sort of thing that quite regularly gets thrown about. He said he was in like horrendous place, and he thought about lots of things that he shouldn't be thinking about, and how his life was falling apart, and it's one bad decision, but he also contextualized things where it's like, he basically said, I know that lots of people are doing this. I'm not going to mention names, but I also know that if I'm going to have any chance of making any money, then I've got to rank in a certain place in these races. And if I don't rank, I don't make money. If I don't make money, then it's hard to put food on the table. How do I keep going? And so in a really warped way, it was a little bit like the Tour de France stuff, is like, I'm not cheating because everyone's cheating.
Yeah.
Although he didn't say that, but I remember like Lance Armstrong and a load of that sort of era of cyclists were saying, well, I'm taking it, but I'm not cheating because everyone is. So it just creates a level playing field. It doesn't give me an advantage.
Yeah.
And he sort of alluded a little bit to it without actually saying that. And there were times where he clearly stopped himself going any further. So he was quite willing to talk about himself, but not openly incriminate others, although there was quite a bit of alluding to it.
Did they have to cut it? Like, did you see splices in the video, or
no? It didn't seem to be. I'll send it to you because it's a fascinating listen. Zane Robertson. So he's an Olympian. And, his brother's a runner, and he was pretty. My brother hasn't been cheating, but my family have been taking absolute horrendous stuff on social media since this has happened, and please leave them alone. It's like begging for mercy on one side and then holding his hands up and saying, I've done the wrong thing and I've made bad decisions, but please, it's not their fault. And it was a real kind of tugging at all the emotional heartstrings whilst also thinking you're a cheat.
Yeah.
Tricky.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you're right.
So I'm not doing EPO, so yeah. I wouldn't even know where to start with that. I'm just a Ferrari that hasn't been tuned up yet.
But you're going to do that solid training.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I got out for a pretty heavy run yesterday. My legs are pretty tired today, but I plan to try and get out at lunch for a Zone 2 run.
Cool.
I mean, our initial plan has been pretty good so far, but I've got it here written down on my wall map, and I'm already into the back end of week 2, and I've done pretty much most of them. I still haven't got my walking pad yet from Amazon, so I'm waiting on that. I've actually got 6 weeks now, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks now. So I've had 2 weeks already sort of breaking back in before I started training for this, so it'll be about a 10-week block before the race.
Yeah.
50 miles. I still have to work out where I'm going to stay and stuff.
Looking through it now, it's really solid. Have you got a decent S&C program sort of set up?
Yeah, not too bad. Like, kind of just done my own thing. I've done a little bit upper body and shoulders, not too heavy, and then quite a bit of single leg stuff and footwork stuff, and then you told me about doing the high step up and then the high drop down.
Yeah.
So I've been doing those two, and then a little bit of skipping as like a sort of warm up, extra conditioning bit, but just trying to build it in, and then also just when I'm around the house with the kids, I'm just throwing in little bits and pieces as I go.
Yeah, cool. Are you doing all that at home?
I've got the rugby gym down the road, which I'm going to. I've been there once or twice a week, And then if I can't get down there, I've got a little setup in my garage now, which is, not too bad. And I've got an old school Amazon bike. You'll love it. It's a crack up, but that would be good enough to get a zone 2 session in if needed.
Yep.
But I plan to get this walking pad and standing desk in the next week, and when you probably see me next, I'll be walking when we're chatting. So, yeah.
I went for a zone 2 run earlier this week and called one of the guys that I coach, and normally I'd be chatting away, but for some reason, when I was trying to think in detail, talk in quite a prolonged way about how we're going to build up to something, and I was running at the same time, it was all challenging me quite significantly. So it felt harder than it should have done, but that was maybe the concentration element. You never know. But no, that's good. So in the gym, do they have things like med balls that you can chuck about and stuff, things like that?
Well, I bought that one that from last time, so I got a 10 kg one. They've got a couple down there. They've got kettlebells and barbells, and they got the proper chin-up bar. That's why I've gone down there a couple of times, because you can get a bit more done.
Yeah, tick 2 boxes with. We could do some lunge work with some rotation stuff with a med ball, and step up stuff with like a high reach with a med ball, and some throwing stuff as well. And because like when you're going up steep terrain, it's not like going to be going up a straight staircase. It might be diagonal. You might have to reach up for something. So having good rotational strength as well is probably quite a good idea. So we can probably have a bit of rotational stuff into it. A bit of like the shoulder work's great for carrying the pack and things like that. And if you remember any of your sort of fairly basic neck strength exercises from rugby, that's probably worthwhile as well, because you're going to have to stabilize your head for a long period of time. But once you've got a pack on as well, you sometimes find that people jut their chin and change their posture, and that can make things quite sore up top if you're in that posture for a long time. Basically conditioning the neck and the shoulders to carry the pack and to maintain good posture. So for that, you can do some overhead lifts are good as well, like military press and push press and things.
Yeah. I've done a bit of a series of shoulder press, or I've done the sort of Penley row for the back, and then also one where you lift up and turn and then press. So I can't remember what it's called, but it's like an upright row and then a shoulder rotational cuff, rotator cuff push, and then a push.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that one as well. And then a little bit of around the world, so the plate around the head like that.
Yeah.
For shoulders and neck and upper body. So
looks like a ultra dad dance move when you're
the Macarena, whatever, it's ultra dad Macarena. So that's been pretty good. Like in terms of getting down to the gym, it's once or twice a week. So I'm trying to maximize that, but also get in the running volume.
Yeah.
So I think the walking desk, walking pad, and standing desk will be a bit of a game changer. I'll be able to work away digitally and then get maybe 2-3 hours at a time on the walking pad, depending on how much my legs can take.
So the other thing, just like going back to the program, is there isn't is North Berwick Law climb on a Wednesday? Is that basically the high intensity?
Yeah, so that was I just put that in there just now so I could get used to going back up the hill again.
Yeah,
and we can change that to whatever. It's just kind of getting back used to the trails and climbing and coming down.
Yeah.
So I just put that across the Wednesday, because Wednesday's kind of a good day. I'm not in Edinburgh. I could probably squeeze it in just after lunch before school pickup, or do it late at night, or do it first thing early in the morning. So I've got a bit of flexibility on Wednesday. So that day, Wednesday, actually might become my long run day.
Okay.
So Saturday and Sunday have kind of been packed. Like this weekend is Freddie and Ollie's birthday party, and then Sunday morning is Anna's birthday, so it's probably going to be a bit of a write-off.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I'm just trying to load one of your runs up here. Actually, it's the North Berwick run as well. So yeah, if you do that, do it the way that you've done it, so that you've built, where are we? You built 38 minutes of zone 4, zone 5 intensity in that.
yeah,
So that's a really good session. 13 and a half minutes of zone 5. So and then probably bearing in mind that your 18 minutes of zone 3, some of that you're actually working just as hard. It's just your heart rate is building through zone 3 to zone 5. So that's a pretty tough session. So you probably don't want to do something like that with the amount of volume that you can do more than once a week.
yeah.
How sore were you after that? Or were you not too bad?
I wasn't sore at all.
Good.
Straight after, my calves were a little bit tight, but I kind of eased them off last night, and then today my legs are a little bit tired, but otherwise fairly good. I probably go out for a 10Ks today, I'd say, or close to,
Yeah.
without too much trouble if it's slow.
Yeah, nice. So just allow if it's a 10K the day after something like that, just allow it to be really easy so that you can recover nicely. That's a good sign that you're not too sore after that. But the carbs going up the hill on that are going to get an absolute battering. So your skipping is a really good way of it. It's like low pogos. You're just getting continual calf conditioning.
Yeah.
And just try and, like, during the day, try and do 3 times 15 single leg calf raises a couple of times a day on each leg, just to try and bulletproof the calves quite nicely.
Yeah, I've been doing that while I've been making coffee. So
Perfect.
two times 10 reps on each leg, and then the kettle's boiled.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. But yeah, it's just like little things like that. They're the sort of the boring parts of strength work that are important. I am a prime example of, I don't do enough of it, and I get sore through my calves all the time because they're getting a battering from running. So because you've got a bit of a time budget, I can't remember if I told you about a scientist called Veronique Bilat before. She's like
I think you did.
she
Remind me.
so she is an absolute expert on threshold training, marathon training, but she kind of goes against the curve a little bit, where she thinks that, and her studies prove this, and yet a lot of elites still don't do it, is where she thinks that short intervals are really, really good. And she actually thinks that they're better than long intervals, like 4 times 2K, for example, because they don't have the same recovery effect, but you get a really, really good threshold effect in a short period of time. So a session that she does, that this is one of her advanced sessions. There are watered down versions. It's 30-30, so it's 30 seconds hard, 30-second recovery, but the recovery is done at marathon pace. So you're not walking, you're not jogging slowly, you're still running. So an example of that session would be like you're doing 30 seconds at 5K pace, maybe a little bit faster, 3K pace, and then you do 30 seconds at marathon pace, then you're up, then you're down, then you're up, then you're down. But all of your recoveries are moderate, so you never recover fully. And so an elite runner can build about 18 minutes total in that session. I think the best I've done is about 12 and a half minutes. And what she says is that you get the training effect from it, but what you don't do is, because you're not doing 40 minutes worth of high intensity work, you don't deplete your glycogen stores the same way, so then you recover better. And so then her theory being that you can do more of it in a week. But
Because we did a couple of those sessions last time.
Yeah.
I remember doing the 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off.
Yeah.
And then we sort of made it a bit longer as we went. That kind of the things in my head about doing. Do you ever remember doing honey mullahs? Did you ever do that in
I
rugby?
remember, yeah. Remind me what they are. I remember the
So
name.
you basically jog slash run the baseline
Yeah.
of the rugby field, and then you turn the corner and you do the diagonal sprint to
Yeah.
the far corner, then turn and jog, and then diagonal sprint back.
Yeah.
I remember doing that, and I got so fit. I actually, when I was younger, I remember I was training for some rugby thing, and I did no running, and then went to the regional cross country, and I won the cross country.
Yeah.
And I probably, looking back, it was probably because of all that rugby training. And we did, every time you made a mistake, you had to do a honey muller. So at the end of training, we had to do like 10 to 20 honey mullers every week, or twice a week every week. And I'm pretty sure that got me like super fit. So that's probably very similar to this
Yeah.
style, maybe slightly
And
slower on
it's
the
probably
baseline.
not too dissimilar. And one of the things that she says, I'm not sure if they've really managed to get down into the science of why yet, but they're convinced that it's the going from relatively slow to fast, and the acceleration has an added physiological benefit. So they call it acceleration training because of that. So you're never actually going that slowly. But what she wants is a really quite hard acceleration in the first couple of seconds of the 30.
So would that be the hard session and take over from the law reps, or would the law reps stay there and there'd be this one added in somewhere?
I think that probably depends on how much you're getting out, because you can't do that much high intensity. So say you just say in an ideal world you ran every day, so you're doing, not that rest days aren't allowed, by the way, 10-day block, and the plan is that you're going to run every day for 10 days, then have a rest day. Then what you might do is, so say 7 runs in a week, you could probably get 2 high intensity into that. If you're doing 6 runs in a week, you can probably do 2 high intensity. If you were doing 5 runs a week, you're probably starting to shift more like 1 to get the balance of your training right.
Yeah.
And it depends a little bit on the person. And what you could do as well is I've not used these very much. I've read about them a little bit more. Is you can do these things called shock weeks, where you deliberately overdo it for a week. Then the following week would be pretty easy, because that week's going to be quite stressful, where you get more high intensity and more volume into it. They're probably quite advanced things, shot weeks. Not necessarily because it's like we can't go out and try and run hard, but it's just because the risk of injury is far more significant when your volume is lower.
I think that's probably my problem. Is I realized yesterday when I was really hurting, that was when I was loving it the most.
Yeah.
And that I could, even though I'm sore, I'd go out and do another hard session today if I was told to do that. That's what happened in rugby, was go out and do what you're told, and do it as hard as you can. And that's probably why I got injured so many times during my rugby careers. The trainers never realized that every single session I was going as hard as possible.
Yeah.
I never remember in my career them ever saying, "Hey, you need to back off a little bit here because you're way overtraining."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my problem. Even though I'm sore and I'm slow now that I'm older, like I'm still prepared to go through the hurt zone, and that's when I actually love it. I was thinking yesterday going up that hill for the 4th time, I was like, actually, this is what I would do every day if I could. Is just
Yeah. And
find the search
it's
for
so
hurt.
counterintuitive, isn't it, that running easy makes you run faster, but just because of the physiological changes and the things that happen in the muscle, it does. I really enjoy the hard sessions as well, but I've also got to a point where I get quite sore now as well. I'll be really annoyed with myself if I start the hard session sore, because I know it will mean that I won't be able to do it the way that I want to do it, which makes me get a bit better at managing my body the rest of the time in the week. And it's probably you're more aware of it as you get older, because suddenly you get out of bed and it's hard to put your socks on. And whereas when you're 25, you think you're bulletproof.
Yeah. It's just signified to me yesterday how important to get the volume through the zone 2 or even zone 1, and how disciplined I need to be at that point, and knowing that people will be passing me and I'm running slow, and sometimes going up the incline I'm actually walking, but if I just stay in that zone I'm much more efficient. So it's just another identifier to me how important, and not getting injured again in that zone 2 is much more manageable, and you could do that zone 2 every day, couldn't you?
Yes, and it's also far more relevant to your race, because if you're going to do 56 miles, you're not going to survive for very long in zone 4 or 5 if you tried that. But you also, to cover 56 miles as fast as you can, you need to be really efficient at zone 2, because that's going to be the far nearer the intensity that you're doing it at than the high intensity stuff. But doing the high intensity work has got multiple benefits, because it can play a part in raising your zone 2 intensity, which means that you get faster at lower intensity stuff. But it also psychologically makes zone 2 feel really easy. There's a really big psychological aspect to endurance sport, where, it's like by the time you get to mile 50, you'd probably, I'm sure you'll have enjoyed it, but you'd quite like it to be over, and you've still got another 6 miles to go. And it's the same in the marathon. Is like you get to Canary Wharf in the London Marathon, for example, and there's an amazing atmosphere, but it's starting to hurt for most people, and you've still got 6 miles to go. And it's like, 6 miles seems like a long way when your legs feel like that. But it is a long way.
Yeah, for sure. Will you update the final surge for me, and then it'll just populate and be in there? Say with the 30 seconds, could I do that as a rugby style, because there's a field just down the road?
Yeah.
I could do like a slightly longer Hinimala around the field, and then I don't have to go too far.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And I don't think there's any magic way of doing it. And 30 seconds isn't going to be better than 29 or probably 33. It's a relatively short rep that's hard with a good acceleration at the start of it. And then for the advanced version of it, so that she has 2 versions of that workout. One of them is you go really hard for 30, and then you go really easy for 30, and you build as many reps as you can. And when somebody's pretty fit, you can. I've coached people that have done over 40 reps for that.
Yeah.
But then the more advanced version is your rest period is still quite fast, so you never get full recovery.
Okay.
And if that lasts 10 minutes, that the actual work section, that's pretty good. If you get past 10 minutes, that's really good. The last couple of times I've done it, that 10-minute cutoff has been my target, but then really trying to hold good paces for that 10 minutes, trying not to let it drift.
Do you want your paces to stay consistent, or are you expecting a drop off at a certain point, and when you drop off, that's when you stop, or can you just keep going?
Yeah, well, she talks about this really well, and I guess bearing in mind that she's worked with some quite advanced athletes doing it as well, is they've got their fast pace, and then they've got their marathon pace is the recovery. So marathon pace, they definitely know what that feels like, and they'll be pretty good at managing the pace of that. The fast pace, some of them will be really robotic because they're quite stat based, and they'll want to know exactly what that pace is. She's not as bothered about that. She just wants it to be fast, and she talks a lot about learning feel. That's one of her big things as well, rather than being too stat orientated. But just like you said there, the session finishes when you can't hold pace anymore. So if you feel like you've not got the kick to accelerate in the fast section, or your recovery pace is dropping significantly, then time to stop.
Okay, what about back in, say it's 10 minutes work, what about having 5 minutes rest, like rugby, for example, and then going for 80, 60, 40s or 10 times 100-meter sprints with a walk recovery? What about that on top of that session?
Yeah, so I've tried that before as well, actually, where I've done like quite a long recovery, not necessarily putting a number on it, but if you do that 10-minute work right, it's hard. It's really hard. So maybe 5 minutes of walking. It can be longer. I don't think that matters too much. And then even trying to do like a second set. But if the second set lasts half the time that you managed in the first one, that's pretty good. Or you could do it differently, where it's like 4 times 400 meters, or 2 times. Well, you do like 100-meter reps, that sort of thing. What you got to be careful for an endurance guy is sprinting is really, really strenuous. And so it's a little bit like when you start going to the gym again and I'm going to go through a moderate weight phase. So I'm going to do 3 times 8 of back squat, but I'm going to control the load quite. So I'm not going to go immediately to what I was lifting in my heyday. I'm going to get a weight that feels about right. I can finish the set with good technique. You actually try and load sprinting in quite a similar way, where you build up really cautiously, because the last thing that you want to do is pull something. You get a lot of hamstring pulls for people if their hamstrings are weak or not strong enough, let's say, and they're not used to sprinting. And then you don't want to do that when you've only got 5-6 weeks to prepare for an ultra.
Yeah.
So be cautious about the really high intensity. So that would be sprinting.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I can sprint anymore, but I can go a little bit faster. What about heart rate? Do I need to keep an eye on that, or just don't even worry about heart rate? Just let it
in
run?
That section, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like track it.
Okay.
Have a look afterwards.
Okay. Cool.
By the end of the 10 minutes, it will be pretty high. By rep 3, it might not even be in zone 4 by that, because it's not got a long time to respond. So, but you'll be working hard, so don't worry about that. But if you do your North Berwick Law reps, try and manage the intensity, looking at that sort of zone 4, zone 5 boundary.
So when I go up, push hard, and then when I come down, just easy down.
Yeah, and then I would. Yeah.
Like push hard to
use the down as your recovery, and then you're also going to get the loading on your quads from dropping and descending, because that's quite stressful as well. But that's more of a mechanical load on like muscles and tendon ligament than it is on heart rate, which will come down as soon as gravity's helping you.
Okay, cool. Awesome.